Welcome to Crime Podcastle Unsolved Mystery Series, episode 72.
Ooh, 72.
Today,
Wow.
we're diving deep into a case that's both fascinating and heartbreaking.
Okay.
It's the unsolved murder of Advocate Jyoti Rawat in Ghaziabad, India.
Oh, interesting.
She was a brilliant lawyer known for taking on tough cases, especially those defending the underprivileged.
Mm.
And in 2013, she was tragically killed,
Ooh.
leaving behind a mystery that remains unsolved to this day.
What's fascinating about this case is that it pulls you in on multiple levels.
Yeah.
You have the legal drama of a lawyer fighting for justice, the human tragedy of a life cut short, and then the layers of mystery surrounding the circumstances of her death.
Exactly. And that's why we're here today.
Okay.
To really unpack this case, explore the different theories, and see if we can make sense of the evidence and the lingering questions.
Right.
It's a case that captivated the nation, not only for its brutality, but also because it raises concerns about the risks faced by those who fight for what's right.
Before we get into the specifics of the murder itself, it's important to understand who Jyoti Rawat was as a person.
Yeah, for sure.
She was 32 years old at the time of her death, and from everything we've gathered, she was incredibly dedicated to her profession. She was known for her integrity, her fearless advocacy, and her commitment to fighting for the underdog.
It sounds like she was a real force to be reckoned with in the courtroom.
Oh, absolutely.
Do we know anything about the kinds of cases she took on?
She specialized in representing marginalized communities and victims of exploitation.
Okay.
Think human trafficking, labor rights violations, cases that often put her up against powerful individuals and institutions.
Oh, wow.
So you can imagine she wasn't afraid to ruffle some feathers.
That detail makes this case even more intriguing, right?
Yeah.
Because it introduces the possibility that her work, her fight for justice, might have made her a target.
For sure.
It's almost like something out of a legal thriller.
It certainly adds a layer of complexity to the case, but we shouldn't forget the human side of Jyoti either.
Right.
Outside the courtroom, she was a devoted daughter living with her aging parents.
Okay.
Her friends described her as kind, empathetic, and fiercely independent.
That's nice.
She was a full person, not just a lawyer, and that makes her loss even more tragic.
It's heartbreaking to think about her family and friends left to cope with this immense loss and the fact that her killer might still be out there.
Right.
Okay, let's unpack the events surrounding her murder.
Sure.
What happened on that fateful night?
It was the night of September 14th, 2013.
Okay.
Jyoti had a late meeting with a client at the courthouse in Ghaziabad.
Mm-hmm.
Witnesses saw her leaving the courthouse around 8 p.m., heading toward her car.
Okay.
Everything seemed normal, but that was the last time anyone saw her alive.
So she vanished right from the courthouse parking lot?
Well,
Was there any sign of a struggle there?
no, not at the courthouse. Her car was still there the next morning, untouched. It was as if she had simply disappeared into thin air.
Wow.
But later that morning, her body was discovered in a deserted lot miles away from the courthouse.
Here's where it gets really interesting and disturbing.
Yeah,
She wasn't just missing. She had been murdered.
right.
And the crime scene pointed towards a violent struggle.
Exactly. The autopsy revealed she had been stabbed multiple times.
Oh my gosh.
And crucially, there were signs she had fought back against her attacker.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't a quick or clean crime. Jyoti fought for her life.
That image really adds another layer to the tragedy, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Even in her final moments, she was a fighter.
Mm-hmm.
What did investigators uncover at the crime scene besides the obvious signs of a struggle?
There were a few key things that immediately raised red flags for the investigators.
Okay.
First, her belongings were missing, her briefcase, her phone.
Oh, wow.
Things you wouldn't expect a random attacker to take unless they were trying to cover their tracks or stage a robbery.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
If it was just about silencing her,
Yeah.
why take her belongings?
Right.
It seems almost too deliberate, doesn't it? Like
Yeah.
they wanted to mislead the investigation.
Precisely. And that's why the second detail is so significant.
Okay.
They found DNA evidence under Jyoti's fingernails.
Mm-hmm.
It was clear she had scratched her attacker during the struggle.
Okay, now we're getting somewhere.
Right.
So they had DNA, potentially from the killer, but it didn't match anyone in their database.
Right.
That's a huge lead, yet a frustrating dead end at the same time.
Yeah.
What does that tell us about the attacker?
It suggests a few possibilities. Maybe the attacker was from outside the area, someone not in their local database.
Oh, okay.
Or maybe they were deliberately careful not to leave any other trace behind, indicating a planned and premeditated attack.
It sounds like the investigators were dealing with a real puzzle from the get-go.
Yeah.
DNA evidence that leads nowhere.
Right.
Missing belongings that could be a red herring. It's no wonder this case has remained unsolved for so long.
Yeah, it's a tough one.
But I'm guessing they had some working theories, right?
Yeah.
Where did they focus their investigation?
Given the nature of Jyoti's work and the seemingly calculated aspects of the crime, investigators naturally explored two main avenues: her professional life and any potential personal conflicts.
Okay.
Remember, she was known for taking on powerful adversaries, particularly in cases involving corruption and exploitation.
Right, so they were looking into the possibility that someone she crossed paths with in the courtroom might have wanted to silence her permanently.
Yeah.
Do we know if she had received any specific threats related to her work prior to her death?
There's no record of direct threats, but her colleagues and friends have mentioned that she was aware of the risks involved in her line of work.
Oh, okay.
She wasn't naive about the fact that she was making powerful enemies.
That's a chilling thought.
It is.
It's like she knew there was a possibility she might pay a price for her pursuit of justice. Did investigators uncover any specific cases or individuals that stood out as potential sources of danger for Jyoti?
One case in particular caught their attention.
Okay.
It involved a high-profile corruption case against a local politician.
Oh, wow.
This case was particularly sensitive because it had the potential to expose a wide network of corruption within the local government.
So we're talking about a motive ripped straight from the headlines.
Yeah.
A lawyer taking on a corrupt politician and then being silenced to protect a powerful conspiracy.
Right.
It certainly fits the narrative of a targeted attack.
It does.
But did they find any concrete evidence linking this politician to Jyoti's murder?
That's where the trail goes cold.
Oh.
They investigated the politician and his associates, but they couldn't find any direct link to the crime.
Really?
No witnesses, no financial trails, nothing concrete to connect them to Jyoti's death.
But that doesn't rule them out entirely, does it? I mean, if someone is powerful enough and corrupt enough to orchestrate a murder, wouldn't they also have the resources to cover their tracks effectively?
It's certainly a possibility.
Yeah.
The absence of evidence doesn't necessarily mean the evidence never existed.
Right.
It could have been destroyed or expertly concealed.
That's true.
That's the frustrating thing about cold cases.
Yeah.
Sometimes the pieces are there, but you just can't quite put them together in a way that holds up in court.
Okay, so the corruption case and the politician involved are definitely a major piece of this puzzle.
For sure.
But what about the personal side of things?
Mm-hmm.
Did the investigators find anything in Jyoti's personal life that might have motivated her murder?
They looked into that as well.
Okay.
Any potential love affairs, family feuds, personal disputes that might have escalated. But again, they didn't find anything conclusive.
Really?
Her friends and family insisted she didn't have any enemies outside of her professional life.
So on the surface, she didn't have any obvious personal motives that would explain her murder.
Right.
But I wonder if there's something more to it.
It's possible.
Sometimes the most personal secrets are also the most well-hidden.
Yeah,
Is it possible there's something investigators missed?
for sure.
Something lurking beneath the surface that could explain why she was targeted?
It's certainly possible.
Yeah.
We have to remember that we're dealing with limited information here.
Right.
What we know about Jyoti's life comes from official reports and interviews with those who knew her.
Okay.
There's always the chance that there are details, secrets, or relationships that were never revealed or documented.
That's what makes these unsolved cases so compelling, right?
Definitely.
There's always that element of the unknown, those lingering questions that keep you wondering.
Yeah.
So based on the evidence and the lack of a clear suspect, what are the main theories investigators have considered to explain Jyoti's murder?
They've explored several theories, each with its own strengths and weaknesses.
Okay.
One theory is that her murder was a professional hit, directly related to her work on the corruption case.
Okay. This theory is supported by the seemingly planned and deliberate nature of the attack, as well as the missing belongings, which could have been taken to mislead the investigation.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
A professional hit would explain the level of precision and the attempt to cover their tracks. But wouldn't a professional hit be more cleanly executed?
Well,
The fact that there was a struggle, that she fought back, and they left DNA evidence behind seems a little sloppy for a professional killer, wouldn't you say?
that's a valid point.
Yeah.
And that brings us to the second theory, which leans more towards a crime of passion.
Okay.
This theory suggests that her killer was someone who knew her personally, Someone with a deep-seated grudge or a motive rooted in intense emotion. Perhaps someone who felt betrayed or wronged by her. Someone who acted impulsively rather than with calculated precision.
So in this scenario, the struggle, the DNA evidence, and the missing belongings could be explained by the killer acting out of rage or desperation rather than careful planning.
It's like they wanted to hurt her, to punish her, not just silence her.
Right.
But the challenge with this theory is that investigators couldn't find any evidence of a personal conflict in Jyoti's life.
Yeah, that's the tricky part.
There was no disgruntled ex-lover, no family feud, no one who seemed to have a strong enough personal motive to kill her.
Right.
Which, of course, doesn't mean that motive didn't exist.
No, not at all.
It could be a hidden relationship, a secret she kept from her family and friends, something buried so deep that the investigators never even knew to look for it.
It's definitely possible.
Okay, so we have the professional hit theory and the crime of passion theory. Are there any other explanations that investigators have considered?
There's one more theory that can't be entirely ruled out, although it's considered less likely.
Okay.
It's the theory of a random robbery gone wrong.
But we talked about how the brutality of the attack and the missing belongings didn't quite fit the profile of a typical robbery.
Yeah.
Wouldn't a random robber be more interested in grabbing valuables and getting away quickly?
You're right.
Yeah.
The level of violence used against Jyoti seems excessive for a simple robbery.
Right.
But it's possible that the robbery was the initial motive and that things escalated unexpectedly.
So maybe the robber panicked when she thought back.
Yeah.
Or maybe they were under the influence of drugs or alcohol, leading to a more violent confrontation than intended.
Could be.
It's still a stretch, but I guess we can't completely dismiss the possibility.
Exactly.
And that's what makes this case so challenging.
It really is.
We have these different theories, each with its own supporting arguments and inconsistencies. And without that one crucial piece of evidence, that smoking gun that ties it all together, it's impossible to say with certainty what happened to Jyoti Rawat.
Absolutely.
It's incredibly frustrating, isn't it?
Yeah.
To think that her killer might still be out there, potentially living their life when her family and friends are left with this unresolved grief and unanswered questions.
It is. It is.
Do we know if there have been any new developments in the case recently? Any renewed efforts to find answers?
There have been periodic reviews of the case, but unfortunately, no significant breakthroughs.
Oh.
Jyoti's family and colleagues have been tireless in their efforts to keep her case in the public eye,
Good for you.
pushing for a reinvestigation and hoping that one day someone will come forward with information that can finally lead to justice.
Their determination is truly inspiring.
It is.
It's a reminder that even in the face of such tragedy, hope and the pursuit of justice can endure.
For sure.
Speaking of the pursuit of justice, I'm curious about the impact Jyoti's murder had on the legal community in Ghaziabad. Did it change the way lawyers approach their work, especially those dealing with similar high-stakes cases?
It definitely had a profound impact.
Okay.
Jyoti's murder served as a stark reminder of the risks inherent in defending the vulnerable and challenging the powerful.
Wow.
It sparked conversations about the need for increased security measures for lawyers, particularly those handling sensitive cases.
It's a sad reality that sometimes fighting for what's right can put you in danger. Did Jyoti's case lead to any concrete changes in terms of security measures for lawyers in Ghaziabad?
There were definitely calls for increased security at courthouses and for better protection for lawyers handling high-profile or sensitive cases. Some changes were implemented, but it's an ongoing discussion, and many argue that more needs to be done to ensure the safety of those who are upholding the law.
It's a reminder that even in a society governed by laws, there are those who operate outside those bounds, who use violence and intimidation to achieve their aims. It's a sobering thought, but it's important to acknowledge these realities. Now, before we wrap up, I wanted to touch on some of the lingering questions surrounding Jyoti's case. For example, has the case ever been officially reopened?
Sadly, no. Despite the pleas from her family and the efforts of some dedicated journalists and activists, the case remains officially closed. The police maintain that they conducted a thorough investigation, but many believe that crucial leads were overlooked or not pursued aggressively enough.
It's understandable that her loved ones wouldn't give up hope. They deserve answers, and Jyoti deserves justice.
What about the DNA evidence found under her fingernails? Has there been any progress in identifying the source of that DNA?
Unfortunately, no. The DNA profile remains unmatched in any criminal database. There's always a chance that advancements in DNA technology could lead to a match in the future, But for now, it remains a tantalizing piece of the puzzle that offers more questions than answers.
It's like having a key without knowing which door it unlocks. It's a reminder that even with scientific advancements, sometimes the answers remain elusive. As we conclude our deep dive into this case, it's clear that the murder of Jyoti Rawat remains a profound mystery. We've explored the facts, the theories, the unanswered questions, and the lasting impact of her tragic death. What stands out to you as the most perplexing aspect of this case? For me, it's the combination of a seemingly well-planned attack and the seemingly random choice of victim. If this was a professional hit, as some believe, why target a lawyer known for taking on difficult, often unpopular cases? Wouldn't silencing her create more attention and scrutiny, potentially drawing more attention to the very issues they were trying to suppress?
That's a great point. It suggests that either the motive behind the attack was more personal than we realize, or the perpetrators weren't as skilled and calculated as we might assume. It's a puzzle with missing pieces, and it's those missing pieces that make this case so intriguing and so frustrating at the same time.
Exactly. And it's those missing pieces that keep us engaged, that make us want to keep searching for answers, even when those answers seem elusive. Jyoti Rawat's case is a reminder that sometimes the pursuit of justice is a long and winding road, but it's a road worth traveling, even when the destination remains uncertain.
Well said. And for our listeners, if you're as captivated by this case as we are, we encourage you to do your own research, explore the available information, and maybe you'll uncover a piece of the puzzle that everyone else has missed. Who knows, maybe one day Jyoti Rawat's case will be solved, and she and her family will finally get the justice they deserve.
We can only hope. And as always, we encourage everyone to be mindful of the risks faced by those who fight for justice and equality in all its forms. Their work is vital, and their safety should be a priority.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the unsolved case of Advocate Jyoti Rawat. It's a story that reminds us of the importance of courage, resilience, and the unwavering pursuit of truth.
And if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe to CrimePod Castle Unsolved Mystery Series for more in-depth explorations of compelling true crime cases from around the world.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and never stop seeking knowledge.